have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this great land of ours, welcome to another edition of Character Matters. I'm Dr. George Simon, talking about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis affecting much of the free world, indeed much of the world in general, and doing what I can, doing my part to have a conversation, a meaningful conversation about the values and ideals, and especially the attitudes and the beliefs that I think can help save us all, help us to prosper as a people, as a country, as a community of souls throughout the world. And that's what this program is about. Character does indeed matter. It matters in everything we do. It matters to every enterprise we engage in. It matters a lot. And it's about time that we started talking about it again, and especially about time that we made it cool once again, to both recognize the importance of character and to reward those folks who show us the way. You know, it's all too unfortunate an occurrence these days, and in our culture of permissiveness and entitlement, it's all too common, where we pay attention to, and we not only enable, but we also reinforce and reward individuals who set a pretty poor example for the character we would like our young folks especially to form. Now, I'm not some old fuddy-duddy who's out there telling you that every image that we put forth to our children is bad, and that our children don't have a right to kind of feel their own way and to grow up. But we do have an obligation to not only promote values, not only promote the values that build character, but to lead by example and to demonstrate the importance that character has to all of our life endeavors. To send the message home loudly and clearly about the role that character plays and the role it always will play in human happiness. So, toward that end, I've dedicated my life and my work, my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, many regard as the definitive book on the topic. It's been out for almost 17 years and still a bestseller, an international bestseller, no less, because it provides a fresh perspective. Even after all these 17 years, still a relatively fresh perspective on what makes certain kinds of character tick and how to best deal with these folks and empower yourselves in relations with them. So that's just one way that I try to bring the message about the importance of character out there and encourage folks to get on the bandwagon, so to speak, about the importance of character. And then my other book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, also fast becoming a bestseller, very highly rated, 5-star rated book that you can get. Oh, by the way, you can get all my books on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, your favorite bookstore. You can find them on audiobooks from Tantor Audio, books on tape. But Character Disturbance is a more in-depth look at, as its title suggests, the phenomenon of our age, the character crisis plaguing much of the world. And it delves into not only the origins of this problem, but also what we need to do to remedy it. It also talks about why traditional means of intervention, especially traditional therapy approaches, are not helpful when it comes to dealing with character disturbances. All too many people find out the hard way. And what kind of approach really is necessary? What kind of approach does work? How people can and do make improvements in their character, solidify their families, solidify their relationships, help turn around the awful tendency that we've had in the past 30 or 40 years to destroy the institutions that build character in our young people, especially the institution of marriage. You know, there are some folks who are all up in arms about the possibility of two people of the same sex being able to raise a family and to enjoy the blessings of a committed relationship. And unfortunately, all too few people concerned about the fact that other families, traditional heterosexual families, fall apart. And sometimes with all too much the greatest of ease. Because the people entering into the union didn't enter into it with the right idea, didn't really know each other, didn't really have the right idea in mind, didn't really have the forbearance, didn't pick wisely, and gave up all too easily. These are some of the institutions that have, through time, helped instill the character that is necessary in our young people. And unfortunately, many of the institutions that we devised over the years, over the eons, to instill character have met a similar fate. I think about sports as another prime example. A wonderful way to build a sense of camaraderie, teamwork, and especially a sense of character in our young people. Sports is one of those endeavors where they can learn the importance of fair play, the importance of teamwork, the importance of giving your all to something for a greater cause. And it pains me greatly to see what some of these endeavors have become as they've transformed not from character building enterprises primarily, but overly fiercely competitive enterprises of personal glory. And in the process, something really, really dear has been lost. And that's the opportunity to foster character growth in our children. And I'm going to be talking more about that today, and especially about our systems of belief and the role that they play. Our core beliefs play a vital role in our character formation. As I mentioned in the article posted on my blog at manipulative-people.com just this past Friday, our core beliefs really matter. What we hold dear to our heart, the attitudes that we hold closest, they really matter. They influence very heavily how we conduct ourselves. And I think they need I think they need heavy re-examination. So I'm trying to get the message out there. As I mentioned, between my two books, In Sheep's Clothing, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, and also my book for the Christian faith community, The Judas Syndrome. And I'm going to be speaking a little bit about that book and my impetus to write it a little bit later in the program. Because what we believe, what we truly believe, not what we say we believe, it's not what we profess on our lips that matters so much. It's what we really believe in the deepest recesses of our hearts that determines how we conduct ourselves. So if we're to save ourselves as a species, if we're to prosper as a people, we are going to have to really reclaim the core values that I think over time, at various periods of our time in this country, have made us great. Unfortunately, I think that there have also been periods in our history where values were endorsed and beliefs were held that made us not so great. Times that I think we could even be ashamed of. But we have the power to change all that by examining how we believe. And it is because we have always known at some level that what we believe is a big determining factor in how we act. Because of that, throughout our evolutionary history, we have devised these systems of belief to help guide us along the way, to put us on a path, so to speak, that would help not only ensure our survival, but also our well-being and the well-being of others, to help us build great societies. But unfortunately, as all systems of belief can be, many times they've become corrupted. And I talked last week about radical ideologies and their ability to really destroy, to impair our bid for human advancement, and to threaten the freedoms that are so essential to great societies. I mentioned last week, and I'll mention again, that we face two great enemies: the enemy from without, those individuals of a particular mindset, a system of belief that would, in very tribalistic fashion, condemn, demean, and set out to destroy all those who are not of like mind. This is a great enemy of freedom. Make no mistake. The free world, indeed the world as we know it, even the not so free world, anyone of not like mind, faces a very real and ever-present and growing danger from individuals who are drawn to these radical philosophies, these radical ideologies. And if you want to read more about it, you can read some of the articles that I've posted on this very topic, not only at my www.manipulative-people.com blog site, but also at the www.counselingwith2ls.resource. Oh, excuse me, there's no dot there. It's www.counselingwith2lsresource.com website. And you can read the articles that I've written on that topic. And if you want to join the conversation and put in your 2 cents, I'd love to hear it at 718-717-8296. 718-717-8296. That's the number to call. I haven't gotten confirmation just yet today that the phone system is working as it needs to. So we'll hope that it has been routed appropriately, and we'll hope that I can take your calls, and that if you want to join the conversation, you can. But as I mentioned moments ago, we're facing two great enemies, one from without with these radical ideologies, and one from within, by those folks who hold values, who hold beliefs, core beliefs, who harbor ways of thinking that are reflective of poor character. And that threatens our freedoms. Because when integrity of character is not brought to the table in all of our enterprises, when that's not there, all of our freedoms are threatened. Governments are inclined to try and legislate the morality that only character can bring to the table. And in this country alone, in the great United States of America, we have millions of statutes on the books, all of which try to make us behave in a manner that allows us to not cheat one another, in a manner that allows us to not exploit one another, in a manner that encourages us to not only play fair, but play with integrity. And yet, with all these rules, we still have huge problems. as witnessed not too long ago, when some unscrupulous characters on Wall Street and in the banking industry and in the insurance industry brought this country to its greatest economic crisis since the Great Depression. Millions of statutes on the books. But I'm here to tell you, folks, people of character deficiency, people of impaired character, people with a lack of integrity can always find a way around the rules. And they always will find a way around the rules. That's how they're kind of wired. That's their intention all along. So there isn't another statute that we can put on the books that will solve this problem. And in the process of putting these millions of statutes on the books, we have only succeeded in limiting our freedoms. It just doesn't work. Limiting our freedom is not the answer. Fostering and encouraging character, that's the answer. And that's the mission of this program. It's the mission of all my work, my blogs at www.manipulative-people.com, at www.counselingresource.com, my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Character Disturbance, and the Judas Syndrome. That's the whole purpose for it all. And for those of you with any kind of like mind, if you have a story to share, a message that you want to get out there too, or a lesson that you've learned about the importance of character, and especially about the core values and beliefs that people hold that can either foster that character or destroy a character, give me a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Love to have you join the conversation. Tonight I want to speak to those of you in the listening audience who are either familiar with my book, The Judas Syndrome, who adhere to the Christian faith, or who are at least familiar with it. Maybe you're of a different faith, but maybe you embraced some of the same principles that people of my faith at least profess to believe in. I said earlier that it's not so much what we profess with our lips that matters, but what we really hold in our hearts, the values and principles that we really hold true, that we honestly believe in. I heard a wonderful analogy by someone giving a lecture in the nature of genuine faith. He told a story of a tightrope walker, daredevil type in New York City, who would wow the crowds tightrope walking between skyscrapers. And before each walk, he would say to the crowd, "Do you believe? Do you believe that I can walk from the Chrysler building to this building, 35 stories high, without a safety net? Do you believe?" he would say. And then he would walk and demonstrate his ability to do that. And then he would ask, "Do you believe that I can walk back the other way, this time blindfolded? Do you believe?" And the crowd, having gathered and having witnessed his first feat, would begin to chant out, "Yes, we believe." And then he would do it. And then he would say, okay, now I'm going to walk back the other way once again, this time with a wheelbarrow, toting a wheelbarrow, blindfolded. Do you believe? And the crowd would chant out, yes, we have seen you. We have seen you walk. We have seen you walk blindfolded. Yes, we believe. You can now walk blindfolded and with a wheelbarrow. And then he asked for a volunteer to get in the wheelbarrow. Who wants to be the first, he asked, to ride along in the wheelbarrow? That, my friends, the giver of this example said, is the test of faith. Not merely the shouts of the crowd, yes, we believe, yes, we believe. That's not the test. The test is, would you get in that wheelbarrow? Do you believe so sincerely and so firmly with all your heart that you would not perish, that you would climb into that wheelbarrow and let this blindfolded daredevil, 35 stories high, take you on a tightrope ride between two skyscrapers? That's the test of faith. That's the test of real belief. And that's just one of the things that prompted me to write The Judas Syndrome, because I was coming to that very conviction myself, struggling with the soundness of my own faith. What we believe really matters, and it's not what we say we believe. It's what we hold to be true and know to be true in the deepest recesses of our heart. It's the firmness with which we believe and the passion that we put behind it and the ardent character of our beliefs that carries us, that allows us to step into the wheelbarrow, to take that leap of faith. It's a very risky thing, a very daunting thing. Now, I have a great deal of respect for many of the great systems of belief, even though I do believe, I think history bears this out. If you study any of the major religious systems out there, any of the major systems of belief, whether they're religious or not, you study any of them, life-guiding philosophies, if you study them in depth, you will find that in their beginnings were some very flawed men and women, and some very flawed core beliefs. Certainly not all of them. There's no way that these systems of belief would have caught on and taken hold, and people wouldn't have heard a great message to respond to. That wouldn't have happened unless there was a lot of richness and a lot of goodness in all these systems of belief. But if you look closely, there are flaws. I'll give you an example. Even in my own belief system, reading the written testimony of eyewitnesses to Yeshua's time on earth and his teachings, he was recorded as saying that there was only one reason why a union between two people should be dissolved. And that reason was adultery. Only one cause. He didn't say, at least according to the record we have. We don't know what else he said because we only know, folks, when you look at these written records, we only know what some people said, that some people said, that some people said, and that someone recorded, and then re-recorded, and then re-recorded, and translated and re-recorded, that Yeshua said. That's all we know for sure. We don't know all that he said. We weren't there. We couldn't witness firsthand. But at least according to this one source, he didn't say, you know, if your spouse is beating you to within an inch of your life, that would be cause. He didn't say that. At least not that we know of. Maybe he did say it and was just never recorded. Maybe he would have said it if he'd thought of it. We don't know. The point is that when you look at the origins of things, every system of belief, there were flaws and there were errors, but there was also a core of something really essential, something really vital to the human spirit. And over time, no matter what system of belief, over time, people brought to those systems of belief their experiences, the wisdom of ages, the things that they had come to learn, the values that they had come to embrace that had served them well. And so these systems of belief developed. And that's the way it has been with the Christian faith, the formal Christian faith. But I wrote the Judas Syndrome because I was starting to move, frankly, in a very different direction with respect to the personal nature of my faith. I read a book, and it started something. It was just the beginning, and it was just, and really the book was just one of many, many things. And I'm going to, on this show, I don't mean to just do shameless self-promotion of my blog writings and my books, but I'm going to recommend this book to those of you in the audience who also happen to follow the Christian faith or who maybe just be interested in learning something. By Gary Wills, called What Jesus Meant. Because in this book, he makes a point that, we only know what some people said, that some people said, that some people said, and that others recorded, and then others recorded after them, that Yeshua said. What's far more important are not the details. What's far more important is what he meant by what he said, that speaks to the human heart and the human condition, and that just very well may have the power to save both the human race and the individual human soul. That's what counts. And that really spoke to me. And I really started digging. And I really started reflecting. I started contemplating at a much deeper level. What was this person talking about? What does it mean to me? This has got to be personal. This is not all about just proclaiming to other people that I follow Yeshua. What does it mean to do that? What does it mean? What does it mean to even say that I think he and the message that he brought is just the very saving that the human race needs? What does that mean? I've got to tell you that I think it means something very, very different than I used to think it meant. I'll give you one example about that. You know, there is too much evidence, too much undeniable evidence that we didn't start as a species, that the human race did not start, did not begin as depicted in the Garden of Eden story. You all know the story. Many of you know the story anyway, right? God fashioned Adam out of dirt, and then he fashioned Eve out of one of Adam's ribs. And he set them in a garden that had everything. Blessed them with every good thing, all that they needed for the sustenance, gave them the breath of life, and told them everything was theirs and everything would be fine if only they would not eat of a particular fruit off a particular tree. But they did anyway, right? And all the misery that followed throughout all of the ages of human history stemmed from that fateful day and that fateful act when Adam and Eve both ate of that fruit that they were forbidden to eat, the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. So from the traditional perspective, the perspective that I had always been taught, and I mentioned this in the Judas Syndrome, from the traditional perspective, we are fallen creatures. We are innately flawed. And it's because of the lasting stain of that singular transgression. And as fallen, stained creatures, we are in need of redemption. But as I mentioned in the Judas Syndrome, if you really look at the evidence, if you really look hard at the evidence, we seem rather to be not a fallen species, but a very slowly ascendant species. This evolutionary process has taken literally millions of years. From microscopic one-celled organisms to more complex creatures, and eventually to forerunners of us. It's been a very long, difficult road. And it's not over. We are still evolving. We're still growing and learning. A much more hopeful perspective, don't you think? Despite how long it's taken us. And when you think about human history and all the wars and discord and strife of the past few centuries, this is nothing. It's a blip in the long scheme of things as far as time goes, the time of evolution of our species. We've been at this for tens of thousands of years. Many, many years before the dawn of human history, before we had developed the ability and the methods of carrying on communication that could be handed down from generation to generation. We are going somewhere. And we have always needed myths and guiding messages, systems of belief to guide us. Now, do I think, therefore, that the garden myth is a bunch of hooey? Absolutely not. There's profound truth in the story, even though the story itself may not be factually true. You know, back when I was growing up and hearing in school many of the Aesop's fables, I didn't know at first whether or not the stories really happened. You know, perhaps really wolves could talk. Perhaps Chicken Little was real. Perhaps there was a little boy that cried wolf. The stories weren't true. None of the stories were true. But the authors of the stories were not trying to be factually accurate. It's what they meant that mattered. And, you know, I slowly began to get it. Timeless, priceless stories that were not factually true. A part of me really bristles when I witness people so shaky in the faith to which I subscribe that they must literally accept everything in this book that was compiled several centuries ago. It shakes me to see such weakness faced. Yes, you heard me say it. I say to you that these rabid fundamentalists are of the shakiest faith because they need so desperately to believe that they have the unequivocal answer. And that in itself is a testament to the rockiness of their faith. That's right, I said it. I may have just alienated a third or more of my audience, but you heard me say it, and I mean it. I've witnessed it all too often. None of us really knows. And to insist that we do is the height of vanity, supposedly the worst sin of all. To know is one thing. To take a leap of faith is quite another. To get in the wheelbarrow, that's a whole different thing. So, I, I believe in the truth of the stories. In the last several years, I've taken a much more in-depth look at Scripture, participating in several study groups than I have ever done before. And I've been enriched in the process because there's great, profound truths to be found there. But these stories, they were also written by some very flawed human beings. Very flawed human beings. And the human flaws are just as evident in the stories. And the frailties and the shortcomings of the human heart are just as evident. Which is why so desperately the world needed the message that I have grown to believe that Yeshua came to bring us. And that has made all the difference for me. It's what he meant. You know, if all that really matters to the Christian believer is that Christ died to pay the debt of our fallen nature, of our sins, and to atone for them. He could have come, died, and gone back. Simple as that. If all God was looking for was a perfect sacrifice, all he needed to do was die. Done. Could have happened in an instant. Could have happened without him even coming. He spent time doing things, healing folks, not just physically, but spiritually, teaching lessons, using stories, parables they call them, using metaphor, powerful use of metaphor, making analogies, so that the incomprehensible, the hard to understand, the difficult to grasp, could be more readily grasped, so that we could come to see what he already intimately knew. Wow. What a mission. And it began a movement among those who heard and then finally embraced the message. And that is really what the faith was all about. These people, men and women alike, they were willing to get into the wheelbarrow. Many lost their lives. Many were willing, very willing, to sacrifice their lives, to spread the news that they believed would save the human race. How about that? And that's what I believe that it's all about. I don't believe that it's all about buying every word in a particular compilation of written works buying every word verbatim, regarding it as the literal, factual circumstance. I don't believe that. Rather, I believe that I've been called to place my trust in a person that brought a powerful message about the nature of perfect love, the nature of God, for God is love. And how to save our very souls. And yes, I do believe that it is true that by placing my faith in him, that I'm saved. I also know that my faith is shaky at times, where I'm called to get into the wheelbarrow of that tightrope walker going between two skyscrapers with the blindfold on. Yeah, I might say I believe, but there are times still in my life when I don't want to be the first one to climb into that wheelbarrow. So I know that my faith still needs to be solidified. And that's frankly what I pray for all the time. Now, I don't know how many of you are of any kind of like mind. But to me, the greatest challenge of our time is for we human beings to reconcile our opposing and often conflicting systems of belief, whether they be formal religious beliefs, political philosophies, governmental philosophies, or whatever. What we have to do, if we're going to survive, is we have to have an open, honest. These are two words, open, honest, two pivotal words. Completely honest, without pretense, without vanity, without sanctimoniousness, without bias, open and honest discussion of our core beliefs. You can read more about core beliefs and what they really are and the role they play in the post that I posted this past Friday on manipulative-people.com. And I'll be having more to say about it in a series that is in progress right now. But if we don't get honest with ourselves, about ourselves, and with each other, about each other, we won't make it. We will not make it. Why? Because evolution has taken place in many different ways. It's an unstoppable process. And we now have advanced to the point where just a little bit of the wrong biological, nuclear, or other material in the hands of a disturbed character can do tremendous damage. We have evolved to the point where enough carelessness and sloppiness and disregard in the way we treat our planet and each other can destroy us all. If ever there were a time that we need the integrity of character to honestly explore and to meaningfully reflect on the core beliefs we hold and embrace the kinds of beliefs, the common values, and the common principles that could potentially save us all, it's now. The world is at the precipice. Some of these radical folks, like the folks in ISIS or ISIL, whatever you want to call them, they're dead serious. They're dead serious. And we are not going to solve the problem by trying to wipe them out because, every time we try to do that, we foment more discard, and there's always a new group to pop up. There's always a new ideology to pop up. Each time it seems more radical and more deadly than the last. That's not the way we're going to do it. We cannot save ourselves that way. Christ himself tried to tell us that. I marvel at those so-called firm-believing Christians who think that that's the way, that through might we're going to save ourselves and the world. It's incomprehensible to me. The world will be transformed one heart at a time, and I can only handle this one. Maybe I can influence you. But my first priority is the transformation of my own heart, is more deeply embracing the faith that I profess, to understand more fully and completely, as Willis said, what Yeshua meant, what he means for all of us to get that light bulb moment when we see where it is he's trying to get us to go. And if in the Judas syndrome, and in reading it, any of you are so equally inspired, then I have done my job and I feel a little bit better. But for my part, I have to focus on myself, which I will do, and I will continue to advocate these principles and to talk with you every week and to invite you into the discussion because, after all, character matters most of all. See you next week.